Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button as I post daily here on the channel on weekdays. We're on the road to 100 subscribers. As at the time of checking this, I'm at 84, so we're getting so close. You can ask anyone who I'm around for 5 minutes. It drives them nuts. I'm constantly refreshing my subscriber count. So if you haven't, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, as it is very much appreciated. I hope everyone had a great weekend as well. Here today on Monday, I start college again tomorrow. And it's nice because I start at 8 a.m., class ends at 9:15 a.m. So literally right at the time it ends, going right into the podcast. So that works out perfectly for me. It is online on Zoom. So like I said, it all works out perfect. And yeah, let's get into today's video. First topic I want to talk about today is I have two dark horse Super Bowl contenders who I think can make it to the Super Bowl. I do have an honorable mention for each in the AFC and the NFC. So let's start off with the AFC. I want to start off with the honorable mention, and that's the Houston Texans. I have a whole separate topic for them here coming up in a couple of minutes. So I'm not going to talk too much about them because I kind of want to save it for that. But I do have them as an honorable mention for my AFC Super Bowl contender. Solid team, solid coach. Again, I'm going to talk about them more in a couple minutes. But number two, I have the Broncos. I think people are really talking up the Broncos, which is good for them. But they still feel like a dark horse because they don't quite feel in that category with the top tier of the AFC. Even though I think their roster kind of competes to be with those guys, maybe not quite to that level just because their quarterback is not quite at the level of those guys. And the only thing I keep saying is Bo Nix is probably not going to get much better. I think we've just about seen the peak. He may get a little better this year and maybe next year, but I think we've seen him just about peak out, to be honest with you. I think people, if they're expecting to see a massive Bo Nix breakout, like, oh, he's going to get even better going into this season, I think are going to be kind of disappointed. You have to remember, he was the most pro-ready quarterback coming into the draft. He has some of the most college experience ever for any NFL quarterback. And he played a lot of years in college. A lot. I forget the exact number, but it was a lot of years. So, like I said, he's the most pro-ready quarterback coming into the draft last year. It's not, that was kind of the thing with him, is he has a low ceiling but a high floor. Like, he's going to be good, but he's not necessarily he's not going to be as good as if Caleb Williams plays his full potential, Drake May, Jake Daniels. If those guys play their full potential, they're going to be better than Bo Nix. Bo Nix and Michael Penix are probably going to be right around the same to me. Penix could be a little better if he reaches his peak. Those guys are just more talented. Obviously, if you're going to sit here and argue Bo Nix is more athletically talented than Drake May and Caleb Williams and even Jake Daniels, then I can't speak to you. I can't. But at the same time, athleticism only goes so far when you're a quarterback. So those guys really have to prove themselves. As of their rookie year, Bo Nix is the better quarterback than Caleb Williams and Drake May. I think we'd all take Jake Daniels over Bo Nix, including Sean Payton himself. But we'll see with the Broncos. They have a top-tier roster. They really do. I do like Sean Payton as a coach. Remember a couple of years ago when they were getting blown out? It was Sean Payton's first year as a Denver Broncos head coach, his first couple of games, and they lost to Miami. They gave up like 70 points or something ridiculous like that. People were already talking about, is Sean Payton done in Denver? They were already asking whether he's done in Denver or not. And I remember saying, man, what can Denver do to turn it around? And they definitely turned it around. I do like Bo Nix. Like I said, his ceiling, he's probably reached his peak, but he's still a good quarterback. I mean, he played good last year. I think there's definitely a little room for improvement, which he could definitely make, but you're not going to see a massive leap, which I've heard some people say, oh, well, Bo Nix is going to take that even bigger step. I don't necessarily think there's much of a bigger step for him to take, to be honest with you. I think he could maybe throw, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 9 more touchdowns, probably a little bit better with decision making, and he'll probably be a lot more comfortable. I'll say that. No matter what, when you're a rookie, that's what made Jaden Daniels and C.J. Stroud so different, is they look like they've already been playing for 8 years. Bo Nix did look a little flustered at times, but that's to be expected with a rookie quarterback. So that's definitely one thing I think he'll look better on, is he'll be a lot more comfortable in there, which is good for him because he's an accurate quarterback. He'll throw a lot more better balls and not interceptions, which he didn't throw a lot anyway, but you get my point. And number 1, I had the New England Patriots being on there for my dark horse Super Bowl contenders. Terrible schedule. They're going to make the playoffs. And that's kind of what it is for these Super Bowl contenders I have, is as long as they make the playoffs, they can make a run. One, because they're sleepers. People are going to be like, okay, well, this is kind of a free win. Now, the players don't necessarily think it's a free win, but they're looking ahead to playing Kansas City or Baltimore or Buffalo or just a tougher opponent than these teams. These teams sneak up on you. That's what happened to Washington last year. You don't think Detroit in the divisional round last year was already thinking ahead to Philadelphia? They absolutely were. They had no thoughts about them losing to Washington in Detroit, in their house. They had Super Bowl aspirations since week 1. People were talking about, okay, Detroit could actually win the Super Bowl this year. They were the favorites for a while. So that's what happens, is you get teams like Washington who play against teams like Denver, not Denver, Detroit, and even Tampa. And even Tampa, people were kind of like, Tampa could seriously go to the Super Bowl this year. I mean, Baker was the touchdowns leader. He was playing some of the best football of his career. The team was actually getting healthy again. They still didn't have Chris Godwin, but they were healthy. Mike Evans was back. They looked good. They barely lost. They barely lost to the Commanders anyway, but that's what happens when you're one of these sneaky teams. Teams look ahead and you take advantage of it. I could really see New England doing it with a real coach. Some weapons in there. Well, the problem is with the Patriots, and when people talk about them, that they're like, well, they don't have major weapons like some of these other teams. Neither does Buffalo. But you tell me what major weapon Buffalo has. I think the receiving core, and I'm going to talk about this in another video, teams' receiving cores have become extremely overrated. People act like you have to have Jamar Chase or a top 5 receiver to win a Super Bowl, and you just don't. You do not. Look at the Chiefs the last couple of years. Yes, they had a prime Kelsey, which makes a difference, but you do not need Justin Jefferson, that kind of level of receiver, to win a Super Bowl. You just don't. You don't. I mean, look at the offensive weapons a couple of years ago with the 49ers compared to the Chiefs, and look who won that game, or that Super Bowl. You look at San Francisco's offensive roster and feel like, dang, they should blow them out by like 40 points. They didn't. They really couldn't score in that Super Bowl at all. So yeah, I think the receiving core has become the most overrated core in the entire league. Especially, I mean, it always kind of has been, but even more so now. It's just ridiculous. Now, that said, you do need decent receivers to do anything. You can't just go out there with a bunch of practice squad guys and hope your quarterback makes it work. I'm not saying that. You do need decent receivers in order to have some sort of offensive firepower. And I feel like they at least have decent receivers. I like Hunter Henry. He's a great red zone threat as well. Stephon Diggs has been playing great. He hasn't really shown any signs of slowing down with that ACL tear in camp so far. He tore up Minnesota a couple weeks ago in training camp. Demario Douglas, if you know, as a Patriots fan, he has some of the best separation in the league, numbers, all of that. The quarterback play just has not been great for him. The offensive line has not helped him at all. But now the offensive line is one thing that the Patriots have tremendously upgraded. Cole Strange came back. One of their first-round picks from a few years ago. He's actually played well when he plays guard and center. Will Campbell's played great at tackle. Morgan Moses. So they've definitely made some serious upgrades at that position, which is what they needed. I like the receiving core with Mac Hollins. Signing him was nice. So they have decent receivers. They're not. People still act like they're out there throwing to nobody. That's not true. So I think they could definitely be a sleeper team. I think they'll definitely at least make the playoffs, which is massive. That's the thing with these AFC teams. Texans are going to make the playoffs. The Broncos are most likely going to make the playoffs. Their division's tough, so I'm not going to say they're absolutely going to make it. And the Patriots division is kind of falling apart besides Buffalo. The Jets, I feel like, are actually going to be okay, but the Patriots historically play extremely good against New York, and Miami's going to fall apart. So, yeah, I definitely have the Patriots at least making the playoffs, and that's where they can make noise. The NFC, I have an honorable mention being the Minnesota Vikings. We just have to see J.J. McCarthy. Their roster is Super Bowl contending worthy. Absolutely. I mean, I talked about the receiving core a couple minutes ago. They have Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. They have Hawkinson. They have a top-notch offensive strong suit with Aaron Jones. And they have a really good running back core and a really good receiving core. So they're pretty slept on. We just have to see McCarthy. And I'm going to talk about the Carson Wentz signing a little later. So no one knows with McCarthy yet. If he plays good, that team's going to be contending for a Super Bowl. If he's decent, they may be looking to move off of him. I'm telling you. They really could be. People don't realize how big of a year this is for him. If he does not play well, McCarthy may not be on Minnesota next year. We may be looking legitimately at a Trey Lance situation where they just kind of ship him off. Yeah, after a couple of years, even though he didn't play last year, but Minnesota's kind of showing no signs of playing around. Like, they want to compete, and they're a quarterback away. Now, they could have it with McCarthy, or they could have wasted the 6th overall pick last year. So I hope he succeeds. I hope every NFL player succeeds. But there's a lot of question marks. Can he play or can he play? We'll see. Camp is a lot different than the regular season, and they're in a very tough division, so we'll see. The second team I have is the Seattle Seahawks. I talked about them last week on the podcast. Man, the Seahawks had a really good roster. I like Mike McDonald as a coach. I had them ranked pretty, not necessarily low, but I had them finishing 9-8 or 10-7 and not making the playoffs. Now, I have them kind of finishing around there still, but I think they'll make the playoffs, especially with all the 49ers injuries piling up. The Rams injuries seem to be piling up on them. Can they stay healthy all season? The Cardinals are kind of a toss-up. No one really knows what's going on with them. And I like Seattle's roster more anyway. Sam Darnold plays like he did last year. Seattle's absolutely going to finish probably with 12 wins, to be perfectly honest with you. They finished with like 14 last season with Sam Darnold. Minnesota did. And to be honest with you, Seattle's roster them and Minnesota's roster is not that far off. You know, maybe obviously the Minnesota's receiving crew is better, but Seattle still is a pretty top-tier receiving crew. I love Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp may not be the guy he was, 4 years ago, but he's still going to be a good receiver. He just has injury issues like his entire career. JSN really broke out last year, which you love to see. So Kenneth Walker, these guys can stay healthy. They're going to be a juggernaut on offense. They're going to have a very good offense. We obviously know they're a good defensive team with a great defensive head coach. So I think the Seahawks, absolutely, if they get in the playoffs, they can make some noise. The only issue I have is, can Darnold play in the playoffs? We've seen him last year with Minnesota against the Rams. Did not play well. Didn't play well against Detroit when it meant having to play for that number 1 seed. When he's had to play under pressure, he has not played great, but he has it under his belt now. That was truly the first time in his career he's played for any pressure when it has to come to winning anything. He's never had to play for winning anything his whole career. He was a backup in San Francisco, obviously out in New York and Carolina. They were actually in Carolina. He was playing. They were like a game or two out of the playoffs. But even then, no one expected anything from Carolina a few years ago. But, yeah, Darnold, this is truly his chance. Okay, I got that out of me. I know, I got the nerves out. I need to play to win something now. Now Sam Darnold needs to go on and win a playoff game or two. And he could do it with Seattle. So, and number 1, I have an extreme shocker. I just talked about them a few seconds ago. The Carolina Panthers. Yeah, I have an extreme shocker here. Now, You may be asking, well, why is necessarily the Vikings an honorable mention and the Panthers are in the top two? Well, the Vikings have more expectations than the Panthers, and I'm focusing more on Dark Horse. Who is more of a sleeper? Carolina, absolutely. Now, I did have Carolina about a month or so ago, finishing around 6-11. Now, I think they could still finish that. But Carolina plays historically good against Atlanta. They have good competitive games. I think they're going to beat New Orleans twice. I really like Carolina's roster a lot more than a lot of people do. I had Bryce Young as a dark horse MVP candidate, not a winner, but a candidate. He's going to play very good this season, and they are an extreme sleeper. Teams see Carolina on the schedule, they're not going to be fully focused on Carolina. And teams act like, well, they were so bad a year ago, how could they be good? Look at Washington a few years. Last year, they were picking number 2 overall and were a game away. They were 60 minutes away from the Super Bowl. Now, Carolina, they may not quite have the roster Washington did last year, but Washington's roster was not a great roster last year. Like, it was not anything that blew you away. Jaden Daniels playing them being an absolute sleeper came into their advantage. Carolina's a sleeper. Bryce Young's going to play extremely well to me. I think his career is now going to take that next step. I think we're going to see really why he was picked number 1 overall, and he'll quiet down the, okay, they should have picked C.J. Stroud number 1. What were they thinking? Now it'll be, okay, well, they were pretty smart picking Bryce Young at number 1. There was a reason why. Has his confidence. Derrick Brown's back this year. Their offensive line is actually pretty good. Ted McMillan, I think, gives them a great receiving weapon. Leggett, Thielen showed no signs of really slowing down. He's played well. They could probably use a little bit better of a tight end, but their defense, J.C. Horn stays healthy. They have good defenders, to be honest with you. Now, their defense isn't great, but it's good. But they can make some noise. This is a team who, if they can make the playoffs, I think if they win 10 wins, they can make or if they get 10 wins, they can make the playoffs. The AFC is not great. The NFC North is going to be a tough division. A lot of those teams are probably going to finish 9-8, 10-7, but I could see Carolina finishing 10-7. And especially if they get to the playoffs, no one's going to be worried about Carolina. Nobody. They're going to kind of overlook it. They're like, okay, well, we played Carolina. What's next week? And Carolina, that is one thing they could use to their advantage. And I could see them maybe winning a playoff game or two and actually could make a run. They could. Now, do I think Carolina's going to make this Super Bowl? No, I don't. Honestly, I don't think Seattle's going to make it either. And I do not think Minnesota is going to make it either. But those are teams that could make it more than others. So, but if they were to make it, I'd be like, wow, good for them. Not saying that they're not going to. I don't think I can't see them in it, but those are teams that could do it. The same goes in the AFC. Could I make the Patriots? Could I see the Patriots making the Super Bowl? No. Same thing with the Broncos. No. And the Texans, no. I can't see either of those teams in the Super Bowl, but they could do it. As long as you get in the playoffs, you have a chance to do anything. Next topic I want to talk about here, I have, could Shedeur Sanders be cut in the upcoming slate of cuts coming from these teams, especially the Browns? They just cut Tyler Huntley, was it yesterday? So I don't know if they'll cut Shedeur Sanders. Kevin Stefanski dodges questions with Shedeur, and respectfully so. I mean, I get he doesn't necessarily want to answer every question in depth because he has a lot more going on. He has a whole team to worry about than just worry about Shedeur Sanders. I completely understand. But he does avoid some questions I feel like he definitely could answer. And sometimes he kind of gives answers that kind of feel spiteful in a way. He knows that Shedeur goes in there, they're going to be calling for Deion if they lose. You know, every team knows the precautions with that. They just do. But I can't necessarily see him be cut from the Browns. Now watch, the second I end this podcast, there's going to be a report. Oh, Shedeur Sanders cut from Browns. Where's he? I'm going to be like, great. If he were to get cut, I'd like to see him go to a team where I feel like he could get some playing time. He was going to be the number 1 overall pick. Maybe not over Cam Ward, But should have been the number 2 overall pick. We know why he wasn't. I explained that in another video. If you want to watch, go ahead. But I don't know. I can't. I can see them cutting him because that team has really not treated him well. Now, I'm not saying he should be treated like he's on a pedestal. The thing is that when I sit here and say, and I see other sportscasters say, well, they haven't treated him well, treated him whatever. Then you get people say, well, I don't know why people have to act like he should be on a pedestal and above the other quarter. Like, I'm not saying that. And no one else is saying that, but he's been in the media a lot. And it kind of seems like he gets picked on more than anybody. So, and the Dylan Gabriel comments last week, he can say he wasn't talking about Shedeur. We know what you're talking about. Of course you're not going to say you're talking about him. But we know what you're talking about, dude. And the same goes for the preseason game this week, where they took him out in the last 2 minutes or so. You know, whether or not people are trying to argue, well, they wanted to see what they had in Huntley. Bro, they cut Huntley yesterday. They had no intentions of keeping Tyler Huntley. Clearly, they had zero. And while he did technically struggle, you watched it out there. The eye test proves it all. Dude, he was out there running for his life out there. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, especially Shedeur, but I'm going off what I've seen. Dude, the dude was running for his life and everything. It was any other quarterback out there. I don't care if it was Lamar. I don't care if it was Drake May out there. Running for his life. It doesn't matter. No quarterback can succeed with a third string offensive line and receivers dropping passes. He threw a couple good balls that the receivers dropped. So, and it happens no matter who's back there. But, you know, I don't necessarily think he played terribly. People say, oh, he was terrible out there. Why would they keep him in the last 2 minutes? Dude, he was running for his life every possession. So we'll see whether Shedeur gets cut or not. If he were, I'd really like to see him go to the Rams. That's a place where he could have a serious future in play. In the LA, the spotlight for him there in LA, that's the place for him to be, is with the Rams. Stafford, who knows how he could be done after this year. If this back injury really bothers him, don't be surprised you see Stafford hanging up after this year, especially if he misses a lot of games and they do end up getting Shedeur Sanders. So people are going to be like, okay, we do have a legitimate solution now. So we can actually move off of Stafford. I mean, he was talking about being traded this year, and he didn't. So they would move off of Stafford if they had a legitimate solution, and he's one of them that could be a legitimate solution. Playing behind Stafford with McVay, that would make some serious noise on a good roster. If I were him, I'd be praying to get cut from Cleveland. This whole situation for him has been a disaster. And honestly, I think he's handled it well. He's talked to the media well. He hasn't made any controversial comments. He's been great up there on the mic. So, you know, he hasn't done anything wrong in terms of being on the Browns. A lot of it is just the before interviews and him on Colorado. Guys, move past it. The way that his character on the Browns, he's supposedly been a great locker room guy. No controversy, pumping up his teammates. You watch him on the sideline when Gabriel's throwing touchdowns. He comes in and gives him a big pat on the helmet, and he's excited. He's been a great teammate. You go when you watch it, it's exactly what he's been. He hasn't been a guy who's been tearing people down and been cocky and telling people he's better. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He's been humble on the Browns. He has. Next topic I want to talk about is, why is no one talking about the Texans going into this season? I've seen someone comment this the other day, and I kind of thought about it too. Like, why is no one talking about Houston? Well, for one, people are expecting them to win the AFC South anyway. When you're not a very competitive division and people kind of see you far and away the best team, people are just not going to talk about you as much, because people kind of expect you to just go in and win. And the AFC South is an extremely lackluster division. It's probably the worst division in football, to be completely honest with you. The Titans have zero expectations. The Colts are just collapsing, and we haven't even started the season yet. That's going to be an absolute disaster. And the Jaguars are actually on the Texans' heels more than people think, to be honest with you. I actually think that Jacksonville has a good roster. If Trevor Lawrence goes out and just sucks, though, Jacksonville's a massive problem. they're going to have to move off of Trevor Lawrence. They don't have a choice. This is a make or break year for Jacksonville, and it's very quiet going into this year about it. But if he goes in and sucks this year, they have to move off of him. They do. They've got to find something else because they have good players and young players that need to develop. And Lawrence is now in his 5th year, going to his 5th year this year. It's time. It's time to show something, dude. You were supposed to be a generational player, and he's not lived up to that at all. May have had one decent season, but he's not lived up to the generational prospect. So, in the Texans the last couple of years, they've won a playoff game. They've won their division, and last year they weren't very good to end off the year. Last year, they were a weird team. Last year, they had a lot of players get hurt. Between Nico Collins get hurt for a little while, Stephon Diggs obviously missed the whole year. Their offensive line just was really bad. They did end up blowing out the Chargers. They played great against the Chargers, and they played good against the Chiefs, but they never truly felt like they were really in that game. To be completely honest with you, we knew Kansas City was going to win that game. Yeah, they just didn't have a great end to last year. They didn't have a lot of positive momentum, even though they won a playoff game going into this year. They did draft some good receivers coming into this draft. So, but I want to see the offensive line play, because if it played like it did last year, Houston could be in trouble. They could end up missing the playoffs, and Jacksonville could end up winning the division. Jacksonville feels like a team that people weren't necessarily talking about, and no one's expecting them to be great, but they could be on Houston's heels. And I think they will be. So, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're Houston. I know you necessarily want to hear like, oh, Houston could go on and win the Super Bowl. I think you want to hear that for your team. But I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago with my sleeper contenders for the Super Bowl, it's not necessarily a bad thing not having your team constantly in the media. It is not a bad thing. And Houston not being in the media, people not necessarily talking about them, they could sneak up on some teams. You don't necessarily have to worry about every time CJ Stroud makes a mistake that, oh, Houston's collapsing, now their Super Bowl hopes are gone. You don't have to hear that. You don't have to worry about that. So Houston, like I said, people are kind of expecting them to make the playoffs. Their division is terrible, and they feel like the best team in the division with the best coach in the division, the best defense. They have Will Anderson and Derek Stingley entering their primes. CJ Stroud the same. CJ Stroud did have a little bit of a sophomore slump last year, so that's why people may be down a little more on the Texans than usual, but we know he's a good quarterback. So, healthy Nico Collins, they'll be good. Houston will be fine. You don't have to worry about not hearing them in the media 24/7. Use that to your advantage and see that as, okay, no one's talking about us. Good. We can go on and be 6-1 or whatever, 6-3, 7-3, and no one's talking about us, and I'm fine with it. We'll see you guys in the playoffs where it matters. Last thing I want to talk about today is the Vikings signing Carson Wentz. And could it mean more than I don't know, than I guess people think? I think so a little bit. Sam Howell sucks. Sam Howell's not an NFL quarterback. I watched him with Seattle last year too, once Geno went out. I had a parlay on that game. And of course, Geno and them, he only needed like 20 more yards passing for me to hit my parlay, and then he got hurt. And Sam Howell played. Sam Howell's not an NFL quarterback. He's not an NFL. He's absolutely awful. Terrible. And the Vikings seen that, and well, they're absolutely going to start J.J. McCarthy. I'm not saying Carson Wentz is going to be the starter by any means, but what if things get out of hand and he really is not playing well and they have a slow start and Carson Wentz is there? You could very well see Carson Wentz start. Now, I'm not necessarily saying Carson Wentz is the savior for the team or anything like that at all, but I think there's definitely some thoughts in that organization. They wanted to re-sign Darnold, by the way. They did, but Darnold got more money in Seattle, and he wanted the bona fide starting job. And much respect to Darnold. I'd want it the same way. They paid him more, and you don't necessarily have to worry about getting your job taken. So, absolutely, I don't blame Darnold for going to Seattle at all. But Carson Wentz, that signing feels like there's a little something there. Now, whether they say so or not, they're absolutely not going to say, Carson Wentz is here because we don't believe in J.J. McCarthy. There's some question marks there because they wanted to bring back Darnold, and they get rid of Howell, who is a bad quarterback. But they gave up some draft picks for to trade Sam Howell, and meanwhile they did get some in return. But I don't know. I feel like there's a little something there with the Carson Wentz signing, a little something, whether it's a lot or a little something is something. And to me, I don't feel like they fully believe in J.J. McCarthy. I feel like if they could go back and draft number 6 overall again, they wouldn't take him. They would stay with Darnold. Now, they obviously didn't know Sam Darnold would take them to be 14-3 into the playoffs. They did not know that and be in the MVP conversation, or else they wouldn't have drafted him at all. But they definitely, if they could go back, they'd do it. They would do it in a heartbeat. They wouldn't have a single question about it. Kevin O'Connell didn't really want to see him go, but they knew you draft a quarterback 6 overall, you had to take a chance on him. You can't not just never play him and trade him. And because I remember in the middle of last season, there was one trading McCarthy maybe to Cleveland or Las Vegas, somewhere, and you could maybe still see it happen next year, especially if he doesn't play well. So there could be a little something there. We'll see, of course. So, yeah, that's it on today's podcast. Excuse me. If you liked what you've seen today, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button for me. If you have anything about what I said, make sure to leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your guys' takes. And I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.